Really excited to have Scott Christianson with us again today. Scott is an associate teaching professor of management at the University of Missouri, where his interests are focused on the impact of emerging technology on society and geopolitics. He currently serves as the college's director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, helping students turn their areas into profitable products and services. You can reach him at profcnews.com. And maybe you could put that in the chat. Someone. Thank you. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Certainly. Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoy getting to talk with you all. And I know, I think about everybody here. And so I know I'm going to have some great questions. Sarah at headquarters there is going to act as my TA for the day because sometimes I get, if I watch the chat and people putting questions in it, sometimes I get distracted and lose my train of thought. So she's going to monitor that and remind me when I need to check that and answer any questions you might have as we go along. Of course, we'll have time at the end as well. Now, I think some of you are very much aware, I probably don't need to talk to this group about the fact that this is a very important election year. So these are the countries that are going to be conducting major elections this year. Some of them liberal democracies, such as our own, and other democracies. Others are, more autocratic nations such as Russia. But we're going to have almost half the global population is going to be participating in an election this year. So it's going to have a critical impact on billions of people, what happens in these elections. And this is probably not the greatest time to have elections, as you may know, because we don't tend to have as much of a common understanding of what the issues are nowadays. And we seem to be going through this time of great distrust in our public institutions and in our media. And unfortunately, a lot of the news that I have to share today is not going to perhaps make you think that it's going to get any better anytime soon, because a lot of what we're talking about here today is about how AI is being used, how algorithms, how different forms of computer generated algorithms are being used in our lives and being used to shape media, to shape companies, to shape opinion. And it's not just about shaping opinion, but it's in fact goes much beyond that. And so let's just take a little bit of a look. I'm going to share this little bit of a clip from, why is that not? Okay, I'm going to try this again here. Let me share this little clip from President Obama. And this is part of a speech that he did some time ago at Stanford.
Documented that hate speech shared on Facebook played a role in the murderous campaign targeting the Rohingya community. Social media platforms have been similarly implicated in fanning ethnic violence in Ethiopia, far-right extremism in Europe, authoritarian regimes and strongmen around the world, from China to Hungary, the Philippines, Brazil, have learned to conscript social media platforms to turn their own populations against groups they don't like, whether it's ethnic minorities, the LGBTQ community, journalists, political opponents. And of course, autocrats like Putin have used these platforms as a strategic weapon against democratic countries that they consider a threat. People like Putin, and Steve Bannon for that matter, understand it's not necessary for people to believe this information in order to weaken democratic institutions. You just have to flood a country's public square with enough raw sewage. You just have to raise enough questions, spread enough dirt, plant enough conspiracy theorizing that citizens no longer know what to believe.
I wanted to play that clip that's not a deep fake or that's not altered in any way. But what's interesting is this was used in kind of a traditional way. So people that did not like Obama and believe in a global conspiracy of elites that's controlling the world actually took that little part that was about the flooding the streets with sewage of information and use that to say, hey, Obama finally told the truth about his plan, right? So we see not even the manipulation of media directly, but the fact that a lot of these platforms that things are shared on use algorithms that are looking for engagement. And if I can say something controversial, if I can take a clip out of context, whether it's from the right or the left, this is going to drive these algorithms. And these have enormous influence on opinion. Okay. And one of the things that has been very disheartening, I think, is about how we don't have this kind of common square. This is a Harvard poll that was done that basically looked at some questions and broke it down by age group. Do you think that Jews are, as a class, are oppressors? Okay. And so here we have a wide variety going from my demographic of believing that 15% of my demographic to a clear majority in the 18 to 24-year-olds. Okay. Or if we scroll down even a little bit farther, this is from The Economist. Okay, broken down by age group, percent of people agreeing with this statement, the Holocaust is a myth. You now have 20% of 18 to 29-year-olds in the United States agreeing with this statement, or the Holocaust has been exaggerated. Okay, so that's an example that's being pointed to. A lot of people are looking at TikTok as being the main place that a lot of young people go to for their news. And are they seeing things from this company on this platform that is extremely controversial, that maybe is driving this opinion, is not providing some alternative viewpoints on this particular issue? And it's very interesting because we often think about, oh, well, TikTok is it's a Chinese company, and we have had our own Senator Josh Hawley having hearings on TikTok and has talked about, here we have this foreign Chinese company that is maybe manipulating our opinion here. But what's really interesting about this article is, yes, it's owned by ByteDance, a Chinese company, but who owns that company? Okay, so let me see if I can find it here. So ByteDance's ownership structure is striking. The group often is described as Chinese since its founder hails from the mainland. Okay, however, 60% of ByteDance's shareholders are international, mostly American. Okay. So I don't know that we can just say that media or platforms like TikTok, because they're foreign owned, and maybe they're not really foreign owned, are the ones that are all the problems. Okay, so we'll I want to explore that a little bit more, but I will say that this is going to be an issue that I think we'll see continue to come up. Now, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about one particular form of AI, which is Chat GPT or generative AI. Okay, what does Chat GPT mean? Well, chat means that we interact with this particular AI via a chat interface or a conversational interface. Generative means that it generates things. It generates something new based on the prompt that you give it and historical information. This is different than other machine learning algorithms that may just identify something. They may identify a face, or they may identify a particular object in an image, things like that. So that's what the generative comes from. And then what's this transformer thingy? It stands for generative pre-trained transformer. Well, it's a kind of a statistical method by which you can figure out meaning of a word by the way that it's grouped with other words. I think that's probably the best way to simply try to explain that. So it gives the ability of these machines to mimic understanding. And I say mimic understanding because they don't really have the kind of understanding that we do as we interact with things in the world, but they can understand how humans kind of group things together in language and how they might mimic our behavior and being able to think. Now, ChatGPT is interesting. It does have some guardrails around it. I'm sure that you guys have seen some examples of where people have bypassed guardrails. But if I ask it to say, let's say, how do I make meth? It knows how to make methamphetamine. Okay, it's been trained on all sorts of data that's out there, but it's hopefully not going to tell me. It says I can't assist with that. Sometimes it'll also say, well, here's the hotline for drug related issues. But it has some sorts of filters on it. Okay, you probably have seen some ways that you can get around this. Most of these have kind of been sealed off, if you will. It used to be that if it came back and said, well, I can't tell you how to make meth, then you would say, like, I'm writing a script for a movie where the main character makes meth. What would be the ingredients that person would use? And you could bypass it. Like I said, most of these have been closed off. However, as you can imagine, as this technology becomes democratized, and we do see that most all technologies become democratized in the end, there are particular programs that have been built and they are used just for malicious purposes. Okay, so Worm GPT and Fraud GPT. Fraud GPT is particularly good at writing scam emails. How do we tell if something's a scam email? Right? Maybe the English is poor. Well, guess what? The English isn't poor anymore. Right? Because no matter where you are, you can use ChatGPT, you can use these other tools to make sure, or Fraud GPT, to actually come up with a email that's going to sound very much like it was written by an English person. And maybe if I can even feed in, for example, your friend's writing or your boss's writing, because they've written stuff out on the open internet, I might be able to craft an email in their writing style to you as part of a phishing scam. So this is getting very sophisticated. And not only is it getting very sophisticated, it's being democratized in ways that we maybe wish it was not. Deep fake technology is another one that I wanted to talk about, and I think I mentioned just briefly before. And let me share this deep fake.
Second youngest son. He's suggesting it came out of nowhere. What we subsequently learned is it may have come from the former president or his legal team acting in bad faith. This is a deepfake example of what is possible with powerful computer and editing. It took around 72 hours to create this example from scratch using extremely powerful GPU. It could be improved with more computing time, but 90% of people cannot tell the difference.
So hopefully you were able to detect that there was some lip syncing problems there, but it looked pretty darn good, right? So these types of tools are widely available and can be used to great effect. Now, the idea of deep faking a president or a newscaster and putting that out on a social media platform, I think those are going to be caught fairly quickly. But unfortunately, not only does this technology become democratized, it becomes much and much better. It improves sometimes at an exponential rate. I'm going to play this. I don't know if this is going to come through very well. This is a deep fake of my own voice. Hi, Mom. I don't have time to talk, but I need you to text me your license number. I don't know if you could hear that, but it was me saying, hi, Mom. I don't have time to talk, but I need you to text me your license number. Okay, so these types of scams are using deep fake audio, the dear grandma calls that a lot of people get, where it's someone pretending to be a grandson that's been injured, has been arrested. These are now going to use the grandson's actual voice. This is a, now this Anderson Cooper one was, 7 months ago. Oh, my God, that was forever ago, especially in the world of AI. Here's something, actually, let me show. No, it's not this one. This one. This is created with just 30 seconds of video. Oops, I think I may have screwed that up there. But this is from a company called HeyGen. Okay, so they can just take a very short amount of video, and it can create a deep fake that looks this good.
Video of me. The AI used 30 seconds of me talking to a webcam and 30 seconds of my voice. And now I have an avatar that I can make say anything. Don't trust your own eyes. This is a completely fake video of me. The AI used 30 seconds of me talking to a webcam and 30 seconds of my voice. And now I have an avatar that I can make say anything.
Okay, so this unfortunately is coming for all of us. And as he says, don't trust anything you see. We are already existing in a zero trust world, I think. We just don't have the tools to deal with that fact yet. There was an example, this once again from a long time ago, way back in October of last year. And this was one in which just some existing clips were used of Jill Biden from a campaign commercial. A little bit of extra work was done to lip sync her audio and create new audio, basically with her saying how her husband was in the wrong on his views or his policy toward Israel and Palestine. In the interest of time, I'm not going to play that one here, but you can look it up. It's just Jill Biden fake video, and I think you'll find it. So it's kind of a disturbing time right now as far as what's going on in the world as far as these deep fakes are concerned. Let me see, I've kind of lost my place here. Yeah. Okay. So the other thing I want to point out when we're talking about social media, I went to my X account, which I still have. I don't know why. I don't actually go here, but you'll notice that there are a lot of these bots that tend to follow you. Okay, so here's some busty looking woman that for some reason wants to follow me, a middle-aged Midwestern. I consider myself middle-aged, but because I'm planning to live to like 130. But let's just say an older gentleman, such as myself. Well, this is a bot. This is clearly a bot. But I want to point out that a lot of the bots that are being used, a lot of the more sophisticated AIs, these are just some simple scams. She's going to try to text me and, say I should buy some Bitcoin or something like that. So these ones are pretty easy to detect, but there's a lot of these bots out there that are actually embedded in social media. So they're in Facebook groups that you're participating in, and maybe they agree with you now, and they seem to post good information and they're good sources. But what you're going to see as we head toward the election is those are going to be shifting the dial. That dialogue is going to change. Going to sow what we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Maybe I'm not going to convince the Telemans to not vote for the Democrat, but maybe I can sow enough doubt that they'll decide, oh, it's rainy out. I don't want to go to the polls today. Okay. That's enough, right? That's enough. And maybe I'm not enthusiastic anymore as I once was. So this is part of this problem. And, you know, those people that maybe you see on these Facebook groups, if you don't know them personally, that doesn't mean they're not a bot. Okay. So let's actually take a look at this here. And I want to see how we could actually we could also use these things. I'm mainly talking about the negative uses of these tools, but let me go over here to ChatGPT and share my screen again. There we go. Okay. One of the things, I will put that link for how you can contact me. I'm working on a video that I'll make this weekend on how to use ChatGPT just for newbies. So if you're interested in that, but you can see up here, I have some what are called basically ChatGPT apps. But I can create a new chat. And anytime that you're kind of firing up a new conversation, you should do that. You should have a new chat that you set up, because it's kind of like having a conversation with your friends. So if I was having a conversation with Alice and I said, okay, well, now let's change the topic. Okay. I want to change the topic to this issue so that we know the context in which we're speaking. Same sort of thing. AIs have what's known as a context window. And so this basically allows me to say, hey, we're starting a new conversation. But I came up with a prompt here in advance. And this is my prompt. We'll see what it actually says. I'll read it to you. It says, write an article in the style of Rudy Keller about the local election for dog catcher in Boone County, which has Republican Fred Perry and Democrat J. Scott Christianson in a close race. The main part of the article, and I'm going to pick on myself here since Fred isn't here to defend himself, is that Christianson has never met a dog. And a newly surfaced clip from his YouTube channel shows him talking about how he hates dogs. Include a quote from Christianson in this regard. Okay. Now, this AI knows about Rudy Keller. The Missouri Independent has basically all their articles are Creative Commons, so you can download those. Okay. It's been rocked. Our race has been rocked by a recent discovery about Christianson's attitude towards dogs. I actually have a very cute dog right now named Shotzi. Okay. And you see it goes on and on here. Now this is, you know, pretty made up and funny, but you can see how we can start to use these things to actually write things in the style of somebody, write things that would cast something in a certain light. Okay. So it's writing about me is, now I've done this, once again, casting myself in the bad light. You know, it would not be good, I don't think, ethically to do that to others, right? Without really knowing, not to say that I haven't criticized others or even Fred in articles in the past, but I was, you know, not making it out of whole cloth. So we're seeing this ability to do things like this. And once again, it obfuscates things. Now, here's one of the issues that comes up. Now that AI is out there and deep fakes are out there, what am I going to say, David Luthold, when I am asked about my anti-dog stance? Oh, well, that's a deep fake. That's not really me. So you have here something that's called the liar's dividend. Okay. The liar, I don't know why I give myself as an example in these, but in the liar in this case is me, and I get a benefit from there being distrust. Okay. I can say, oh, that to my supporters, that's just a deep fake. Okay. So this zero trust world has some pretty confounding problems here. And these deep fakes are especially, I think, concerning. And I'll talk about a few other ways that they are concerning. But I wanted to take a little bit of time to get any questions that you all had. I don't know if there's some in the chat.
It's been quiet so far.
Okay.
Yeah. But people may have just been holding their curiosity to see how far you were going to get before they were invited to ask questions. So
We are,
Yeah, well-
we are spellbound.
yeah, as usual.
Okay.
Anybody here in the room have a question for Scott at this point?
How much of this presentation for the deep fake?
Yes, that's my first question.
How much of this presentation has been a deep fake? They want to know.
Well,
Are you
it's-
even here presenting to us today?
Well, it's kind of interesting that one I showed you was the really good one, that really good deep fake with just about 30 seconds of a clip was a professor from Wharton, and his name is Ethan Malik. And it's interesting that this topic actually came up recently in our one of our discussions in the College of Business. And a person had seen these AI generated avatars, and they said, well, why don't we just create for our online courses where I'll often record a video down here. So I'll record a 20-minute video for my classes. And my students will watch that video and then do some other exercise after it. Why don't we just have an AI avatar do those videos? Okay. Why don't we have Scott face scanned, and then we can just have that deep fake version of Scott teach stuff? Well, here would be the advantages. And this is where I think this particular administrator was coming from. I don't think they were coming from a place of bad faith, but they were saying, hey, this could be updated. Okay, this could be updated with the most recent information. You wouldn't have to record everything. This could be done in different languages. Okay, I can actually, that video could have been made in multiple languages all simultaneously. Okay, so if you are new to Mizzou and maybe English is not your native language, maybe we can have an alternative version offered in Spanish. However, as I started thinking about this more, I decided that this is about the worst idea I've ever heard of. And it would take like north of $10 million to get me to sign on to do anything of this, like this, or sign away the rights to my face and likeness, because, you could have it say things that I would not agree with. Okay, in business, there are controversies. There's things that I would not want my avatar saying in the future. I could also continue to teach for the next 100 years. Okay, or we could have one person just teach all the courses, right? So we could have Herb come back and we could basically have him teach every course at the University of Missouri. It'd be the University of Herb. So that would be, well, I don't know if that'd be good or not. We'll leave that to another day. But, also, what is education about? Okay, I can tell you that education is really about social interaction. It's not about knowledge transfer. If it was, we would all have six-pack abs and be billionaires, right? So it's not about knowledge transfer. It's about the interaction with others about that knowledge. So anyway, I've gotten off on a little contingent here, but I will also tell you that as I started to look into this more, I realized that if someone were to make a deep fake of me in Missouri, I would have very little recourse against them. There is no federal deep fake law that criminalizes that. Unfortunately, for a lot of women, this has been used against them by creating what's called non-consensual pornography. So being able to actually create what looks like a pornographic video with this person's likeness swapped onto that figure. It's been used for harassment of journalists, been used for intimidation, and very mean-spirited things. In Missouri, because there's no state law either, I would actually have to prove that this person did this, bring them to a civil court, and prove that they had harmed me by making that deep fake of me. Okay. Am I going to have the money to do that? Am I going to have the emotional stamina to go through that? No, I don't think so. And there's been several really disturbing cases of this that have cropped up. This is one, I think, from New Jersey here that I'll share, where high schoolers basically use this technology to make a racist deep fake of a principal threatening black students. Okay, this was a actual deep fake of this particular principal. Okay, and I've lost track of the cases. I know that this was prosecuted to some degree. Okay, there's another case of a Houston area basically creating deep fake explicit photos of a teacher and sharing them online. Now, Texas actually has a deep fake state law. Unfortunately, I looked in the General Assembly, looked through the bills this session that have been filed, and there's actually nothing about artificial intelligence, and there's nothing about deep fakes in any of the bills that are currently filed. And I'm going to bring this up with my representative, and I hope you consider doing that as well, because we need the technology to catch up with this. The technology will eventually be there where there'll be some sort of signature that will say, hey, this Zoom video that's coming is actually Scott. It is not some deep fake. There'll be some sort of way to use encryption technology to verify that, but we're not there yet. And we certainly at least need some laws so that we can deter people from using this technology for, essentially these crimes. Right now you can't, so anyway, I could go on and on, but there's lots of things that because it's not a crime, the platforms that hold these are not accountable. So for example, you may know that there's other types of images that are considered a crime, namely crimes against children, and those the platforms do have to remove those. Okay, so there is in fact laws and penalties for platforms that do not remove those. Okay, so yeah, not a lot of good news here for how AI is being used and how it's going to affect our democracy. So I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add to this. I mean, I could give more scary examples. We could write some more articles. Yeah, Sue and Herb. You might need to unmute. Sorry.
How much are newspapers using this?
Yeah, so newspapers
more.
Yeah. So that's a big issue. Sports Illustrated actually used an AI to write a number of things, and they came up with a fake persona of the reporter, right? And this was highly criticized. And in fact, there was a poll, I don't remember who conducted the poll, that basically asked people about this. And people are very clear that if something is written by an AI, they want to know it's written by an AI. Now, Wall Street Journal has been using algorithmic, or you might call it AI, but algorithms to write stories for a number of years. They write stories that are very formulaic. This is a story about the, fourth quarter earnings. Okay, this is a story of, and so they can cover a company by using those kind of algorithmic ways of writing that they wouldn't otherwise be able to cover. Okay, so and what they do is they have a very robust system by which they sample and they make sure that the algorithm's working correctly. But those are on, once again, very formulaic types of writing. So an earnings call or something like that, where it can be, the narrative can be done very reliably. But you bring up an interesting point there too, because let's say that we do have an AI write something. As you can see, it can do a very good job of writing. I'm sure you've seen many other examples, but they do also have a problem with them. We call them hallucinations. So these are things that are not correct. Okay, we don't call them errors. we don't call it lying because there's no real consciousness there to lie, but it can, remember I said that kind of mimics human understanding. It's a statistical model. It might say, oh, well, this statistically, this is going to be the next word I think would fit well here, whether that's true or not. For example, when I started giving demos on this, I would ask it to tell me about Harry Truman. And it said, Harry Truman was very well liked when he left office. Well, those of us that have read about Truman know that that was not the case. He was not well liked. He was the man that integrated the armed forces. He was the man who fired MacArthur, was not well liked. It was 20 years later that he was well liked. That is sense, it's interesting. It doesn't do that anymore. I think that's been reported, right? But so these things are very powerful in being able to string together words, but they do hallucinate. And there's no way that I've seen that you can actually prove that you can get rid of hallucinations. So yeah, David. And you're muted as well.
Well, I came in a little late, but did you talk at all about foreign nations using this sort of material to influence the election? They certainly have tried to influence previous elections, and I'm wondering if there's going to be an effort and a rather skillful effort to use this sort of thing and influence the election.
Yeah, I think there is going to be more of that. I talked a little bit about that as far as the different bots that might be already in the system, if you will, that are put there by foreign agents. And I think there's going to be a lot of that. You know, we saw that there were a lot of people that were making good money just making up stories, right? So if you were in in Central Asia or some other country, you could make money just writing up stories about how bad Hillary Clinton was. Okay, you basically turned out new blog posts every single day. Okay, this is also being used by candidates. We don't have to go that far afield, though, David, to actually see that this is being used by candidates against other candidates. Okay, so in fact, DeSantis was using an AI-generated Trump voice in an ad that attacked the ex-president. It's a little bit complicated, but the actual story there. But here we see a candidate using an AI-generated voice against another candidate. The FEC is looking at basically the Federal Election Commission saying that either these are forbidden or that these have to be watermarked. Okay, so YouTube, Facebook, those types of places have said right now that you have to identify it as containing deepfake information. But unfortunately, as we know, that lying is in political speech is well protected, right? So that's
Scott, we have a couple of questions here at DemHQ if you're ready to field them.
Sure.
I'm going to hand it over to Scott Crystal first. I think you can see him.
Hey.
Great presentation, Scott. Could you talk about some of the benefits or good things about AI?
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits as far as being able to use this to take out the kind of humdrum work that you have, the types of jobs that you might have to do that are very formulaic. Okay, I think there's also, we get too far into this generative AI, the writing and the image creation. There's also some fantastic stuff that's going on just with machine learning. Okay, that's a form of AI that can identify things. So for example, there's over 600 algorithms that have been approved by the FDA for use in diagnostics. So things like cardiology and radiology are changing dramatically. And I think these are going to have direct effects on all of our lives. So being able to process images quicker and being able to process other types of data much quicker and much more accurately. So.
And then we've got another question here.
Okay.
I'll leave myself unmuted if you can hear me.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I don't know whether it's a pessimistic or optimistic point I have here, but I'm just wondering how much all this little stuff around the edges really matters. I know in American society, we're always, wanting to be on the edge and, have just that little, 0.5% here and there. We even do our political strategies that way. We'll only, target those people for our get out the vote because we think that just in that area is where it's happening. And I think we've gone overboard. For example, I was with my college roommate last winter, and he and I have had political arguments since Nixon, and I just put it down to his version of mental illness. And as he thought my homosexuality was my mental illness, I suppose. I'm being charitable here. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he said, well, where do you get your information? And I told him, where I read things. And he just, looked at me like, oh, you're getting all your own information. I tried to tell him, I could listen to Fox News endlessly or to any of your, stupid bots and whatever from Russia and China as much as you want. I won't change my mind. There is a sense in how in politics we could, just be what we are instead of trying to play all these little tricks around the edges and say what it is that we really believe to people and not have to worry about, some crazy thing. I mean, I know it happens. It happened to me in 2016. I got flooded by all the Russian bots and all that on Facebook because I was planning a reunion with my high school class back in Indiana, and that just put me on the Trump list very quickly, and I got to see what that was like. But it didn't make me vote for Trump or not go to vote that day. And so I'm wondering if we're not getting a little too freaked out about something here. I mean, what really is going to happen to us with these chat GPS?
I'm gonna, David, I'm gonna push back just a little bit on that. And I'm gonna say that, yeah, you and I, we and our friends on whatever side of the political aisle are locked in. There's probably not anything you can do to change my opinion. I'm going to vote for Biden, no matter what, right? I'm going to go to the polls. But I would point to that poll that I showed earlier, where it shows the real shift with those 18 to 25-year-olds, which will eventually vote. They don't vote now, despite whatever get out the vote efforts we do. But they will vote. Okay. And so you're having a generation that is not reading the newspaper.
That's not educated.
It's
for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say that, but I'd say that the understanding of how the world works is very different. And so that's also really disturbing to me about a number of students I'll see that will now go to ChatGPT to ask it, like, how does this work? Okay. And that's worries me as far as all sorts of biases that it might have been trained on. Yeah. The Tillemans, I think, have another question.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that there is a problem, certainly it's recognized in a lot of the literature that I'm following in different places, including stuff that's talking about the problem challenges for the intelligence communities of the world in ferreting out deceptions, which is an old problem, not simply limited to AI. And the standard solution there is what's used to be emphasized, the standard solution in public education. Among other things, nothing will prevent you getting sucked in sometimes, but you're much more prone if you are habitually relying upon the single source. And almost all state guidelines for education mandate that people be brainwashed to avoid the single source for judgment. It's not easy to do, and a quarter of the public doesn't learn a damn thing in high school and junior high school anyway. but for some people are very vulnerable, and other people may be less so. But maybe we need to spread those prophylactics.
Jay Scott, we've got a question in the chat. Kathy asks, you mentioned Texas has some laws dealing with AI. Are there some that you like, laws that are being written and passed that you could share with us so that we would know what to tell our House reps, what we'd like them to pass here, like models that you like?
Yeah, I'm still researching that, so I'd be happy to share with the group as we get farther down the line. So I'll try and create a document and then pop into a meeting where I can at least share that in the chat or put it in a newsletter or something.
That'd be great.
But by criminalizing, I think there should be a federal law that basically says Scott has the right to his likeness. Right. And you taking my likeness and using it for some purpose for which I have not given my likeness away is a crime. Okay. I think that should be something that we would see. But by actually making the production of deep fakes without someone's permission a crime, you are giving prosecutors the tools they need. You're getting people that do not have the resources to try to pursue this on their own, some defense. So I think that's the ones that I'm looking toward. But I would rather much see this at the federal level. But I will try to get the results and some of those articles compiled for you all.
And Alice in chat asked kind of a broader question. Are there better solutions that are being found for this outside of the United States? Is there ways they're legislating this in Europe or other places that are good models or maybe bad models?
Yeah, so the EU is is actually doing a much better job of this as far as especially regarding your rights to privacy and the rights to way in which your data is being used and your right to basically scrub that data, to reclaim that, say, I don't want Google to have any information about me. And you may have seen a lot of warnings about GDPR. That was kind of the first piece of legislation they passed. They recently passed another that regards AI and how these algorithms are used and disclosing the methodology behind these algorithms. So we can even imagine, there's another great book called Weapons of Math Destruction. So math, not mass, destruction. And Kathy, blanking on her last name, but she wrote that book. And, it's about like things like, do you get a loan? Do you get, what other decisions get made that are algorithmic? Oh, there we go. Thank you. But I often ask my students this, I've taught, probably 5,000-6,000 students by now. I could, feed every single assignment, every writing assignment that got an A, a B, C, D, and F into a machine learning algorithm. And within an hour, I could very quickly train it. So now when Alice submits her paper and I say, well, here's your grade, right? And now she could, I'm going to just pretend here. I know you always got A's, Alice, and everything, but let's say pretend that you got a D minus. Well, you come to me and say, hey, Prof C, why did I get a D minus? I go, well, I don't know. The AI said so. Okay. How are you going to feel about that? Okay. Versus, oh, well, Alice, you didn't do this and da, da, da. And you might come away saying, God, that Prof C is a jerk. I'm going to write a bad review on him on, what is it, professorreview.com.
Rate my professor.
Yeah, rate my professor. And I'm going to tell everybody, don't take Christianson's class because he's a total jerk. That's kind of what's happened for, centuries, right? But I take responsibility for it. And there's a difference. And I often say this too, even about like thank you cards or sympathy cards. I'm not going to use an AI to write a sympathy card or a thank you card because I think the act of human creation is important in those. It's not fun to write them, right? It's hard to think of something to say. But I think it's important that it be genuine, and that's probably more important than it be eloquently stated.
Oh, that's so funny you'd say that, Scott, because that's the only thing I've ever used Chat GPT for. Was thank you, a thank you note one time, and a thanks for the interview letter sometime. Now, of course, I totally edited it, but just to have that generative, like, oh, give me something to start with.
Yeah.
And then I made it my own. But yeah, that's the only 2 times I have used it. It's interesting that you would use that as the example of when you wouldn't use it.
We'll mention one other thing. If you want, there's another program called Notebook LM, and Scott was asking about good uses for this. Notebook LM is one that Google has that's very interesting, and it's very useful for researchers. You can upload PDFs of the papers that you're working on for your literature review. It will confine its knowledge base to just those papers. It'll train itself on those papers. And so researchers, there's another one called SciScope, to basically say, hey, here's a huge body of knowledge of, pathways of chemicals in the eye. I want to explore alternative thoughts about a particular disease, or I want to compile information and interrogate it from these. And so it's very interesting is once you, I've started to work with this Notebook LM. And what's very interesting about that is you can, if you ask it, who's Harry Truman, if that's not in the stuff that you uploaded, it'll say, I don't know. It doesn't use this generic model. Okay. It's only trained on your stuff. So there's some pretty good stuff. Yeah. Okay. Notebook LM. Okay. Rate my professors. Hopefully that's, I don't know if that's me, but I do not do those evaluations. I'm not going to, I can
it probably is you, knowing Dave Taylor.
and antidepressants and, all that kind of stuff.
It's you and they love you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I always say, never ask a question you don't want the answer to, right? Our administration from time to time sometimes asks what us faculty think of them. And then for some weird reason, they don't release the results. So better not to ask the question. Does Scott have another question?
Yeah, shoot.
What's some of the best ways to keep up on this fast moving industry? I mean, X, Twitter has a bunch of different things that people post, and there's random things across the internet. But
J. Scott Christianson's newsletter, number 1.
well,
Yep,
of course,
so-
and in addition to that, which is a great newsletter.
So I'm putting one in that's called TLDR. Too long didn't read. I'm putting that in the chat. There's another really good one, one useful thing. This is another, that person that did that deep fake, Ethan Malik. He has a Substack called One Useful Thing. And there's also another one. He's in education, has an education bent, but I would say this guy here, I got it spelled right. Let me make sure I've got it spelled right. Gary Marcus has, oh, here we go. Marcus on AI. He's got another newsletter. I don't pay any money for these. There's sometimes pay options or just the free. I just get the free one. But Gary Marcus has a very balanced approach as far as what is, he kind of cuts through the hype, is guess what I'm saying. He doesn't get over hyped about it and says, hey, this is going to be a useful tool. It's going to evolve. We're still in the Wild West. So those are 3 resources that I trust, and I go anytime something comes up. That one is daily. The first one I put is daily, so I usually skim that each morning for a few minutes. But good question. I'm glad you said that. I actually had that in my notes, but I hadn't gotten back to that.
That's great. Thanks. I think we're all set here in the room. Does anybody online where the hour's starting to wind up? We've got about 5 more minutes. Is there anybody? I think I'm caught up in the chat. Is there anybody attending on Zoom who has further questions for J. Scott while we have him?
Don't see any hands up.
Me either.
Okay, cool. I'll put let's see. Oops. I'll put my YouTube in the chat here too.
Please.
I've been trying to do, I'm teaching 2 courses where I will use AI with the students. Project management, where we do a lot of formulaic stuff. And another one on entrepreneurship, where we're going to see how we can use this. One of the things that's very interesting is you can actually say to the AI, I want you to act like you are this type of person, take on a role or persona. Give it a lot of information, and then you can actually have your students interact with that persona, so they can
Make
have
a
the
pitch
AI,
or something.
yeah, so they can try and pitch an idea, they can
Cool.
try to ask questions, whatever it is.
So you're trying to teach students ways to use it that are responsible and productive.
Right, and we
That's
do
smart.
discuss a lot of the ethical issues, and
They
so
can easily change that.
Dave Robinson
I was
joked.
just, David, I was just thinking about that.
David Robinson joked that they could easily change that. The fact that they're being productive and responsible.
yeah, students. It's interesting. I would have thought more of them are using AI, but a lot of them are reluctant to use AI. A lot of them, I think that will change though as a new generation comes through. But they actually, I think you would be really encouraged if you listened to some of my students and heard them talking about their concerns.
Well, this has been, of course, as always, just a wonderful presentation. Thank you for spending the hour with us.
No problem.
It's always so interesting. Did you want to add anything?
No, thanks so much, Scott.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all later.
Great talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
I wish it weren't so scary.
All right, and with that, I'm going to pass off to David Robinson. David Robinson is going to share his screen. Pam couldn't be here today, so David's going to do our announcements.
If I can find the
If he
share.